Good morning, everybody. Hope you had a great weekend, and thank you for being here today to start your week off as we continue to look at the wisdom of James, beginning in the 19th verse of the first chapter today. James says this: "Wherefore, my beloved brethren, that every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath, for the wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God. Wherefore, lay apart all filthiness and superfluity of naughtiness, and receive with meekness the engrafted word, which is able to save your souls." Most of this week, we will be looking at this particular paragraph where James, as we've been looking at the first chapter, has been talking about temptation. Now he's going to give us several things to help us be prepared to be able to overcome temptation. And we just read the first one, and it is pretty clear there to hear, to obey, to read, to know the Word of God. Then the next section we'll look at, he takes that and takes it a very important second step, not just to hear the Word of God, but then to be a doer of the Word of God. The third element that he will discuss is that we learn to control our words, and then finally the practice of pure religion. So those are the four things we'll be looking at here in the book of James this week. So if you want to again start with me, we'll be there beginning in the 19th verse. Beginning in verse 19, James warns us. He says, and again, I want to emphasize that he says again, "My beloved brethren," that James is writing this wisdom to the church. And so he cautions us that one of the ways for us to avoid temptation is to be quick, be swift to listen to the Word of God, be slow to voice our own opinion, and then slow to get angry about it. And when that we would be following the will of God. He tells us when we operate, with the wrath of man doesn't work the righteousness of God. When we're operating in wrath or in anger, we are not going to be carrying out the righteousness of God. And I'm pretty sure that most of us have experienced that. That when we get angry and operate in anger, that typically we're not at our peak righteousness. And so for a believer here to be protected and guard against temptation, we have to, again, be quick to hear. And it starts right there by being swift to hear, by knowing the Word of God. Because if we're not familiar and well-founded in the Word of God, then we probably won't be slow to speak or slow to wrath. And so I think that's the heart of what James is telling us, and to lay aside all filthiness and superfluity of naughtiness, and receive with meekness the engrafted word. Even when you don't like it, he says we lay aside anything that would interrupt or hinder us from being obedient to the Word of God, and we receive it with meekness. We receive it as a child being directed or given instruction from their father. And so he's given us here our first step, and it's really the foundation for the rest of what James is going to talk about in the remainder of this chapter, is that it begins with a knowledge, with an understanding, being swift to hear the Word of God, putting it into practice into our life. So good word for us today, good word all week, I promise you. you. This week will be some good words, not from me, but from James, from God through James, telling us how to be prepared to deal with temptation, and it begins by being well versed and well founded in the Word of God. All right, have a great day, and we will see you back here tomorrow morning.